session in the evening, RELi. So today I'm excited to introduce our special guest, which is Doug Pierce. Doug is from AIA as lead fellow. He's a RELi AP and a global resilient design director and architect at Perkins Will, Minneapolis. He's an adjunct professor in practice, University of Minnesota College of Design, and he's also chair of the USGBC RELi National Steering Committee and an associate ASHRAE. So just some guidelines for everyone. Just the option to click on the grid view in the upper right-hand corner to see all the various different callers. The chat function is available for anyone who wants to add to the conversation there, but please be respectful of others. Allow others to join in the conversation, but be mindful of not jumping over anyone speaking. Feel free to talk throughout without being called upon, but if you have something to say, you can't quite get into it, just use one of the reaction buttons below and we'll try to get you into the conversation. And just try to be muted unless speaking to avoid any background noise. And without further ado, Douglas Pierce.
Hi folks, how's everyone doing this morning?
Good, thank you.
Great. Well, I don't have a presentation or anything prepared. I was just anticipating this would be kind of a Q&A, so I'm more than happy to just open the floor up. Unfortunately, I know in the presentation from last week moved pretty fast, answered a few questions, but I anticipated there might be some leftover questions from that presentation. So I'd be happy to just entertain those questions.
So I'll get us started with one question. So I'd like to know, how does this complement LEAD?
That's a really great question. It's actually very, very complementary in sort of in multiple ways. In a really basic way, about 20%, maybe 25% of the credits that are part of RELi are actually come from LEAD. So energy, for example, I'll give a sort of a very tangible example. Energy efficiency, basic energy efficiency, is not only a sort of LEAD sustainability strategy, it is also a resilience strategy. So, and I'll put that in very more tangible terms. And we've seen this play out. Let's say on a resilience side, you want some backup energy to run your building off grid if there's a grid outage, something like that, and you're doing, hopefully you're doing photovoltaics and batteries. If not, you might have a combination coupled up with a generator or something like that. So the more energy efficient your building is, the further that stored battery energy will go, the longer you'll be able to run either the whole building or the portions of the building that you're trying to back up. Or if you're doing a generator and you've got, on-site fuels, liquid fuels, those fuels will last longer in a more energy efficient building. So in that case, not only are you likely reducing your CO2 emissions for that building on a daily basis because it's more energy efficient, you're reducing your energy demand. Then if you are in crisis mode and you're needing to run off grid, the available fuels that you have, the available energy backed up in those batteries, or the PV production on a daily basis, it just powers that much more stuff in your building because it's operating very efficiently. So there's a lot of synergies that go. You can apply the same thing to water. Oh, I'm going to do some on-site water storage in case I have an issue with availability of water, for flushing toilets or whatever it is. Well, if you're running water efficient toilets, then you're going to have more flushes per gallon that you've got stored on site. So there's a lot of synergies between the basic efficiency that's embodied in LEAD and the actions of resiliency that are included in RELi.
I have, awesome, thank you, Doug. I have a question that was asked during the program last week, what is your perspective on resilience versus reliability? Kind of going off of that.
Oh, resilience. They're actually, I don't know, they're very synonymous in certain ways. I mean, resilience is about reliability, and there can be certain things that you do that maybe you're driving for efficiency and you let the system become a little less reliable. So you want to, you may want to say, well, I really want that system to be reliable. So I need to really think about what I'm applying to the efficiency. But it's really important not to abandon efficiency. This is not an either or conversation. It's a both and conversation. Or to abandon effectiveness over just straight reliability, right? Because if we don't continue to do things like energy efficiency really robustly, the level of the climate change is going to get so extreme that we won't be able to adapt to it. It's going to get outside the bounds of the level at which humanity and civilization can adapt. In which case, resilience will be worthless. It'll be too far. So this creates a really challenging situation where before we were focused mostly on mitigation, and now we're focused on both equally, mitigation and reliability, resilience, those things together. So it adds a level of in some ways, it adds a level of complexity to the conversation. And there's good things and bad things about complexity. I remember coming out of school, I was working at Randy Miltenberger's office. I think, Tom, you brought that up. And I had just come out of school, and I was doing I can't remember what I was doing, but I said something to Randy like, wow, this is really hard. This is really tough to do. It's complicated, geez. And Randy's response was sort of like, well, it is hard to do, and they wouldn't need us as architects if it wasn't. So, there's some benefit to consider that there is a reason why our profession exists, and it's to deal with the complexities. And if they're, so we shouldn't shy away from things that have challenges. Otherwise, our profession isn't actually delivering a value to society. And if we're not delivering a value to society, then our profession will atrophy. So, I don't know, did I answer your question? I got off on a big tangent there.
I think so. I mean, it wasn't my question, so for me, it sounds great. Yeah.
Hey, Doug. Great to see you again.
Hey, Ralph. Good seeing you.
Yeah.
Are you in Africa?
Well, it is an African background, but I'm not in Africa.
Oh, darn. I was like, good for you if you are.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed your program the other night. I was able to watch the recording. So I had a few questions from that. So first, yeah. I want to thank you and acknowledge that you were, the principal author of RELi, and we wouldn't have it without all your efforts. So thank you so much for that. Since RELi came out, what kind of major improvements have you seen in resiliency, either locally, nationally, or worldwide?
I was just having a conversation with some other resilient folks that are really deep into the world of resilience. And in all honesty, I think there is a level of frustration in those of us that are pursuing resilience, because it's hard to get our clients and our projects to really pick it up and move it forward. There's still a lag in terms of really appreciating the fact that we have shifted from the need for mitigation to an urgency to adapt. That's not fully been comprehended by folks. So in terms of what the shift is, I think some of the shift is that there is a cohort of professionals and other folks that have recognized we need to move into this space. And there are professionals pursuing it, which is a huge shift from even 5 years ago. So now we've got a professional cohort that's dealing with it. And the next step really is to educate the clients, educate the client base around the true need for resilience. My sense is, and it's unfortunate, I'm going to say this, it's really unfortunate, but the heat dome this summer, I think, caught people's attention. And also the extraordinary rain events in Germany caught people's attention. So I think there's some changes, weather-related changes, that can be utilized to leverage the conversation that the change is happening. And the other thing, Ralph, now to talk about some technologies, I think the battery technologies that provide for on-site PV storage, I think that actually is a huge technological advantage that is coming forward. And that if we can get that technology to kind of settle down and get everybody in a space where they understand it, estimators, architects, engineers, I think that's very leverageable technology, and could really sort of open the door, along with just seeing the stuff going on in the weather around us. And as you know, the UN came out with their report saying, it's code red, this is it, this is the last wake up call, kind of thing. So I think that it's certain, there is absolute certainty in the scientific community that this is anthropogenic, human driven. So I think we have to leverage that as well. So whether those are the things that are happening, Ralph, that I think could really start to mobilize this in that kind of space.
So
Yeah,
Doug, go ahead.
I just want to say thanks. Yeah, thank you, Doug. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Ralph. Good chatting.
So Doug, just to build off of what you just said about educating clients about RELi, how would you educate clients if they were interested in doing a certification? How would you educate them or lead them into the path that they should choose RELi instead of maybe WELL or LEAD or one of the other certifications available?
Right. Well, there are a couple ways to think about that. Right, at least for the moment, you need to do a LEAD certification and bundle it with RELi for USGBC. If you're going to do a certification, you're actually going to you would do both, at least for the moment, for a while. And so that's one thing. The other thing, if you're like, so what are the distinguishing factors between RELi and WELL, et cetera? RELi is pretty comprehensive. It's actually the single most comprehensive certification. So you can do basic sustainability, all the basics, energy efficiency, water efficiency, low emitting materials, indoor air quality, those things, those are all part of RELi. So you can cover all those bases with RELi. There's also material health issues that are, I think, maybe a little stronger than they are in LEAD. And there's also aspects of WELL and even more so FitWell that are embodied in RELi. So you can actually kind of touch all of those realms. And RELi also includes social equity issues, very tangible social equity issues. So it's really comprehensive from that perspective, not to mention all the resilience components that it brings with it. So it really is a very holistic certification. You can get a much wider range of topics included, which that was one of the reasons for creating RELi, along with being resilient. It was also when we created RELi 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago kind of space. the market was saying, we want something more robust. LEED was feeling narrow for our folks. And they were looking for something more complete, and RELi was an attempt to deliver that. What we get back now is, wow, there's a lot of stuff here. And it's sort of like, well, you asked for that. And yes, there is. But on the other hand, it's kind of what we asked for. And now folks are like, wow, that's a lot. It's like, yeah, there are a lot of things involved in this conversation. So
sort of following up on that, Doug, how many certified projects are there?
We have a pilot project that's gone through RELi, and we have 3 or 4 others that are working out. We don't have any that are definitively certified. I'm working on Crystal Spohn Hospital, trying to get it definitively certified as we speak. So I think hopefully we'll have that in the next couple or 3 months.
And what level are you going to achieve?
Just a pilot. It's just a pilot level.
Okay. Cool. So, I think back in 2008, with the ERA funds, did a lot for LEED, and it stimulated a lot of governments to go out, transit agencies and others, to start building things to LEED Silver and at least LEED certified status. And I have a sense that perhaps this infrastructure bill is going to have a similar sort of impact on sustainability and perhaps even resiliency, especially when you consider how the building codes are starting to catch up with IBC 500, ICC 500 and such. It feels like the winds are turning that way. What's your opinion?
Well, there is some money earmarked for sort of resilience in the bill. It's not out of the scope of the bill. It's less than we'd like to see, but there's what I've seen so far. There's something in the order of magnitude of $13.5 billion earmarked for resilient infrastructure. So I think that's going to help. That'll definitely help in terms of being a catalyst. And then there's all the other money that is involved in the infrastructure bill that maybe isn't directly earmarked as resilient, but there's going to be a lot of money flowing through the system and a lot of projects that will spin up out of that. So every one of those projects is an opportunity to embody resilience. And that the next step would be actually to sort of try to, in my mind, try to bring some criteria forward for projects that are going to go through that infrastructure bill to be resilient. Maybe it's not baked into the bill right now, but that doesn't mean we can't add requirements in the future, near future, that influence where those influence those projects. So I would agree with you, Tom. I just can't imagine that that's not going to create a lot of opportunity. And it's probably like the IPCC was kind of pointing to, in terms of it's now or never. This is probably the last chance. This infrastructure bill and this moment is probably the last chance. So we're going to spend a lot of money on it and time, both money and time.
Yeah, but to what degree is that funding going out to the Gulf of Mexico to build barrier islands and things of that nature, or is it actually funding research and such that's going to benefit everyone?
Well, hopefully it's doing a little both, right? I mean, it should be doing some of both. My sense is we'll have to work to redirect some of the funding, which is kind of what once it gets in place, because we're not going to spend 1.1 trillion. I mean, we're not going to spend that in a year or two. That's a long trajectory. So hopefully we can start to redirect it.
So Doug, there certainly seems to be a lot of need for urgency, and I think we've been saying that for 20 years or more.
Yeah.
So I've got kind of everything's connected, right? So there's certainly urgency. There's long term. There's, as you pointed out, with the infrastructure bill. There's there's a lot of things. One of the things that I'm seeing is alignment between a lot of systems and people working on sustainability. So, for instance, on the materials side, Mindful Materials is really aligning very closely now with the AIA Materials Pledge. So,
right.
If those of you are not familiar, that's something your firms can sign up to. It's 5 different categories of things you can do on materials. And the AIA is working on guidance on that. So there's a starter guide and so forth now on the AIA website. But that also leads me to ask about alignment with the work that the AIA is doing between that and RELi. And I realize RELi is an evolutionary process, that there are ways to make changes. And right now the focus is on uptake and adoption of RELi. But at the same time, there's this evolutionary process that goes on. So with all that said, I'm wondering if you've had an opportunity to align it all and connect with the work that's going on resiliency at the AIA. Allison Anderson, I don't know if you've had any contact with Allison or other people on that committee, or whether or not the AIA has reached out to you at all regarding alignment with RELi.
We have engaged with AIA. Rachel Minery, who is no longer with AIA, was one of our committee members on RELi, and she was
Fantastic.
Very happy.
Yeah.
And then I actually went to DC, the office at DC, a couple of times, along with other practitioners, to develop a education series, a resilience education series that AI has. So there has been coordination, and AIA references RELi in the disaster handbooks that they put together. And we're in the process of trying to do some updates to RELi now, kind of in the background. It was 2014 when we balloted it, so it's been 7 years. And it's time for an update. And things have happened. I don't think Mindful Materials, for example, existed when we actually did RELi. And Fitwell didn't exist. Now Fitwell exists. We actually referenced things that are in Fitwell, but it wasn't Fitwell when we referenced them. It was active design and some guidelines. So there's definitely some updates, Ralph, that need to happen, and I think there are opportunities to coordinate. We're also trying to include some provisions for how to do updates, some guidance so that we can make RELi a little more flexible. Consensus standards sometimes can be kind of inflexible, and we're trying to figure out ways to provide for a little bit of flexibility in the process, in the governance process, recognizing that the world is changing really fast. Physically, it's changing really fast, and we need to be able to respond to those changes sort of more quickly than consensus standards have been able to do in the past.
So Freddie put in the chat, and just a follow-up question about, is there a pathway to RELi for existing buildings?
There is not one that's been mapped explicitly. We've had lots of conversations about that. I think there's enough. RELi is in pilot. It's very intentionally in pilot so that we have some flexibility. So if you want to do an existing building, I think that's doable. It's a matter of sort of getting with GBCI, USGBC, and sort of working out what that path is for your project. In all honesty, I think they'd be happy to do that. Because we are in a pilot mode, it provides some flexibility. That's very intentional. And I see we're at 10:27. Unfortunately, I have a hard stop at 10:30. I have a meeting that's coming up, so I just want to flag that.
I'll ask one last question before we let you go. I mean, given the fact that this urgency has existed for 20 years, but now is the last time to be urgent. How do we accelerate the uptake of all of this stuff so that we can meet these goals?
Well, a couple of ways to think about this, and it's from a ecological perspective, and also if any of you are familiar with the book, The Cultural Creatives, it's an older book. There's a process for how the world changed mapped in the cultural creatives. But basically, if you look at ecological cycles, the big shifts usually happen during shock events, you know, a fire in a forest, an earthquake, or something like that. And human societies actually are living systems, and if you look at how they change, they tend to change this same way. So that's one thing to hold on to. If you go to the cultural creatives, they'll talk about that sort of process, but they also talk about how, for those of us that have been doing things like green buildings for the past 20, 25 years, that's really, you know, that's sort of like practice for the big event. We're actually getting to understand things and how things will work. And what happens is when there is a big event, kind of a crisis moment, you can see this unpack all the time. It's people with the ideas that other people believe that actually get to sort of lead communities and societies out of the hole they're in. So you can think of the work that we've been doing as a green building community for 25, 30 years as basically the warm-up exercise for a big event. And on the other side of that big event is the space that we really want to step into. So we're, you know, hopefully we have the ideas, the methods, the techniques that are available. And if you kind of step back and you look at the world, there are days when I get up and I go, you know, we might be in the big event right now, between the pandemic, the climate crisis that's going down, January 6th, the whole thing. It feels like there's a chance this is it. So, you know, get your tools ready, because, you know, it might just be here. That would be my thought on it. So, and things could change really fast, and we want them to go our way.
For sure. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
we'll let you get onto your day.
All right, Tom, thank you so much. Everyone on the call, thanks so much. It's been great. It's great to connect back with St. Louis. So, right.
Don't be a stranger. Come back soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you. See you, Ralph.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you,
Take care. Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it.